Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Zachary Foster will be back with us to talk about Israel's ground invasion in a new hellish ground invasion of Gaza City, a new hellish chapter in this genocide. And later in the show, Michelle Eisen, national leader of Starbucks Workers United, will be with us to talk about the ongoing negotiations and the new CEO being in a bit of a tough position. Also on the program, Kash Patel testifies in front of the House Oversight Committee today and is being hammered over the Epstein files cover-up, claiming there was no trafficking and then backtracking. It's a good thing this isn't under oath or anything, right?
It's a good thing they're also turning all the FBI agents that used to look into human trafficking for like elite clientele, let's say, into border patrol guards,
yeah.
basically.
And the fired CDC director and former chief medical officer are testifying in front of the Senate right now about RFK's complete disregard for the scientists there. Charlie Kirk, suspected killer, charged in Utah. And authorities release a transcript of text messages of him supposedly confessing. Trump and company are struggling to tie the shooter to the left, but are still using it as justification to attack liberal nonprofits that are bracing for impact. Dozens of Americans have already lost their jobs for their reaction to the killing of Charlie Kirk. And Deputy Attorney General and Trump's personal attorney, Todd Blanche, threatens investigations of organized anti-Trump protests. Shocker, ICE officers were not wearing body cameras when they shot and killed an undocumented immigrant in Chicago last week. A body of a 20-year-old black man, DeMartravion Reed, was found hanging from a tree near a university in Mississippi in what appears to be a lynching. Israel advances tanks into Gaza City. The EU plans to hit Israel with tariffs and sanctions. That's good. And lastly, the Fed is expected to cut rates as the economy slows. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Hump Day. Sam is out today. We mentioned this earlier. He is with family. He had a death in the family, so condolences to the Cedars. He will be back with us on Friday. Obviously, tomorrow's a Majority Report Thursday. So, looking forward to having him back. I wanted to play this. We didn't get to this yesterday, but Charlie Kirk's old show, what was it called?
Charlie Kirk Show.
Oh, okay. That's very straightforward. There was like a guest host of it in honor of him after he was killed last week. And that guest host was the Vice President of the United States, where he said a lot of inflammatory things and threatened political retaliation and prosecution of left-wing activists broadly because of this killing. They're trying really hard to manufacture consent for an authoritarian free speech crackdown. They've been trying to incite reactions to ICE officers, to the National Guardsmen that are coming into cities as a pretext for further authoritarianism.
I mean, look at the hyping up of the assault on Big Balls. Look at the way they were treating this Ukrainian refugee, which is the first time any of them have shown any compassion for a refugee.
Yep. Well, she was a white woman.
Right, which definitely helps. And they are looking for warrants, basically. This is their same interest in supposedly human trafficking, which, as I said earlier, there's a big article about how they're turning all the agents that had been on that beat, pretty important thing to be looking into, pretty nasty crimes. They're turning them into, see who's undocumented in a kitchen somewhere.
Exactly right. And I, in terms of like the popular sentiment about this, I already see the story kind of fading. And I think in part that's due to the fact that Trump is deploying J.D. Vance for in the keeping with in the tradition of Biden giving the vice president all of the unsavory tasks. It is trying to get it, sending him out there, and he just doesn't have the juice to kind of manufacture consent for the vengeance that they're talking about. But Trump doesn't care about Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was asked about how he's holding up about his death, and he talked about the construction of the White House ballroom.
Look at those trucks.
Yes, bringing in all that gold. Or gold-plated. We gotta be cheap here, folks. And then he skipped his Kennedy Center vigil as well. The Republicans, their turn towards authoritarianism is extremely reliant on Trump using the bully pulpit. And I don't think he's doing it very effectively in this case. So J.D. Vance has this task, and he's a charisma vacuum, and no one cares what he has to say. But the guy that's closest to Donald Trump is Stephen Miller. And there was a great piece in Rolling Stone I'll read some excerpts from, basically showing that he's the shadow president on all of these matters. And he's a legitimate Nazi. So he was the guest on the Charlie Kirk show, hosted by J.D. Vance, the vice president. And this was what he had to say about, what the plans are after this killing.
What emotions I'm feeling right now, this is something people say. I mean, you kind of know the answer. There's incredible sadness, but there's incredible anger. And the thing about anger is that unfocused anger or blind rage is not a productive emotion.
Right.
But focused anger, righteous anger, directed for a just cause is one of the most important agents of change in human history.
Charlie showed that. Amen.
And we are going to channel all of the anger that we have over the organized campaign that led to this assassination to uproot and dismantle these terrorist networks. So let me explain a little bit what that means. So,
you got 30 seconds, so be quick, Stephen.
The organized
wrap it up, Stephen.
The organized riots, the organized street violence, the organized campaigns of dehumanization, vilification, posting people's addresses, combining that with messaging that's designed to trigger and incite violence, and the actual organized cells that carry out and facilitate the violence. It is a vast domestic terror movement. And with God as my witness, we are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks and make America safe again for the American people. It will happen, and we will do it in Charlie's name.
Thank you, Stephen. Don't go away. I'll be joined by a guest.
Great mic work. They all want to be podcasters. What? It's Ted Cruz now wanting to be a podcaster. It's now, I guess, J.D. Vance, and we have a podcaster who's the head of the FBI.
The hours are nice.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I mean, right, especially if you just go up there and just shoot the shit and don't care if you're saying anything true or not. We'll get to that in just a sec, because Tom Tillis, when questioning Kash Patel, makes a good point, and the reason that he's able to say this is because he's a Republican that is retiring. But this Rolling Stone piece from Sunday on Stephen Miller talks about him and shows the influence that he has on the president in great detail. It's called Inside Stephen Miller's Reign of Terror by Asawin Subasang, Nikki McCam Ramirez, Andrew Perez. More than 7 months into Trump's term, Stephen Miller has become America's, if not the world's, most powerful unelected bureaucrat. With Trump's blessing, Miller has been allowed to run and remake the country in a manner virtually unheard of for a U.S. government official of his rank. Think any egregious policy from the Trump administration, chances are it was driven by Stephen Miller. All of it bears Trump's signature, but the president is not the one spending his nights writing executive orders and bending legal theory to his will. We know he's spending his time watching television or golfing or sleeping.
How about them Yankees?
YMCA.
It's fun to stay at the...
All of it bears Trump's signature. All of it bears Trump's signature, as I mentioned. Nearly all of this bears the authorship, or at least co-authorship, of Miller. Everything you loathe or love about Donald Trump's America, you hate or cherish about Stephen Miller's Republic of Fear. Under Miller's guiding hand, the government can deport or kidnap or rendition you or your spouse without due process to a foreign gulag if the president feels like it. The White House can repeatedly threaten to take away the most basic of constitutional protections, such as habeas corpus. The president can launch Justice Department criminal investigations against his enemies, who, by all known accounts, did nothing wrong except annoy the commander-in-chief or refuse to help him steal an election, etc., etc. But there's more. They talk a lot about, we mentioned Jean Guerrero's book about Stephen Miller growing up in California and his deep anti-Latino sentiment from having Latino classmates, but also how he was radicalized as a Zionist and anti-Muslim extremist in college. The article goes over that. But they talk about how he berates all of their colleagues and more, and cites him as influencing some of the most insane decisions that Trump has made, including it was he, according to this reporting, that floated the suspension of habeas corpus. Miller has no legal background, but according to Trump officials, Miller was the mastermind behind Trump's ploy to use the Alien Enemies Act to conduct mass deportations without due process, a plot he detailed in 2023 during an interview with conservative radio hosts Clay Travis and Buck Sexton. Miller was also the first member of the administration to publicly suggest the suspension of habeas corpus, as I mentioned. And there's another part of this piece. I don't have it here, but it talks about, maybe, can you look up the Immigration Act of 1924, word search that? Thank you. This is the part I wanted to also highlight. Miller speaks almost exclusively in apocalyptic terms, in the caricatured language of military combat, forever war, and invasion against the culture and the homeland.
He's a Camp of the State-style Nazi that came out in the Breitbart emails in 2017.
He's yearned to erect a vast hyper-militarized network of what he's dubbed camps for detention and mass deportation, a network he hopes will change the American political and physical landscape forever. Miller, who is Jewish, has been denounced by his own uncle as a one-man betrayal of Jewish moral and political values. Miller has long held the deepest admiration for the Immigration Act of 1924 and wishes to bring America back to those days. The law is notorious for making the Holocaust deadlier for Jews who tried to flee the Nazis, only to be denied safe passage to the U.S. And that's accurate, because that was the Johnson-Reed Act. It's extremely racist. It limited immigration to 2% of the number of people from the nationality that was already in the United States. So it was 2% of a proportion of people in the United States. And they used the 1890 census in this 1924 Act, which is important to know because they could have used the 1910 census, which was the more recent one. They were doing it every 20 years at that point. But they didn't, because by that point, there were more Italians, there were more Jews, there were more Polish people, Greeks, people from Southern, Eastern Europe as well. The act also explicitly banned Asian immigrants, Japanese immigrants. Came in. And what'd you say?
The Drumps came in.
Yes, right. Thank you.
And the blacks also, I'll just say, in that period.
To John Oliver's credit, that was also, he's talking about how that was cringe now, so he's walked that back, the drum thing. But even I had a drum hat. I hate to admit that. But, well, I've grown out of that, hopefully. Still a little bit cringe. But then in the 1960s, basically, that is when they abolished these quotas based on race. And Stephen Miller wants to return to the time when we had racial quotas for immigration, even though it affected Jews. And we turned boats away of Jews fleeing the Holocaust because of this racist act. And that is his vision for America. And we're well on our way.
But they were refugees. That's icky.
Right.
They're infecting us.
And you just see how it'll be in 100 years, there will be nativists that pick a different group that is poisoning the blood of America. This is his ideology. And he's trying to use any pretext that he can to effectuate that, including, obviously, the killing of Charlie Kirk. But as a contrast, this is what Tillis, who is freed to say sort of what he wants, at least now. It's not perfect, but in the Kash Patel hearings, pointing out how the Trump administration is directly inflaming the rhetoric in this country right now.
Within 24 hours of Mr. Kirk's shooting, we had the guy that does the podcast for the War Room and another guy who's denied the Sandy Hook shootings say we're at war. Now, how on earth, and I do believe it's a smaller number, but it's a number that has an influence. How on earth are we de-escalating the situation? And with the tensions as high as they were last week, with going out and saying we're at war. I'm not asking you to respond to this question. I'm just saying that there are people out here on our side of the aisle that still need to look in the mirror. Even if you agree that it's a lower number, bad is bad no matter how many numbers they are. And that kind of rhetoric and that kind of mobilization makes your job more difficult and puts us in a position where we're not being as productive as you want the FBI and state and local law enforcement to be.
Well, that's if you actually care about the FBI functioning in a way that isn't just about persecuting Donald Trump's political enemies. I mean, he doesn't have an interest in really the FBI's functioning. We have many, many critiques of the FBI. I mean,
oh no, the FBI won't be able to go after human traffickers. I would hate if that was the case.
The FBI, the idea that the FBI has been in any way left wing is the most counter-historical, false statement I could ever think of. The FBI was blackmailing Martin Luther King. The FBI was responsible for the killing of left-wing civil rights leader Fred Hampton. The FBI was likely responsible for the killing of Malcolm X. And there were some other police officers who allowed that to happen quite conveniently. The FBI has resources dedicated to targeting activism for Black Lives Matter. We had, I think, Trevor Aronson on the show talking about how the FBI had informants in the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
You think they're
anti-war movement?
Yeah,
I mean, just mosques.
Right. Exactly.
But what he's saying there, he's like, that is like as close as you can get to Republican courage there by Tillis. Right. And as you said, it's because he's not going to be running for office in the future. But even there, he has to couch it with a lie, which is to say, and look, I agree it's a smaller number. What he's saying is it's a smaller number, that there's more on wackos on the left than there is on the right. And that is a lie that he must have to say for them to like get them to continue listening to him. But this is from the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank. Murders by politically motivated terrorism excluding 9/11. The number one is right wing by 300. It's 391 total counted here.
Yeah.
63%, almost 2/3. Islamism is 143, and the left is 65. So only 10%. So this is just a lie, and it is an important lie because it's one that they're using toward their political agenda, which got gummed up in the gears of having all these people like Pam Bondi and Kash Patel implicated in a cover-up of a sex trafficking ring. And now, you know, it's Charlie Kirk to lubricate the wheels again and get the sort of tank back on the tracks.
Right. Ramona Frankenstein said the FBI probably killed Martin Luther King as well. Yeah, that's true. There's the listen to the MLK Files. There's a great podcast on that front. And also, Illuminati Kids writes in, if it was up to you, would you keep the FBI around at all? I do think that there is a function for a federal, like, police service. But obviously it would need major reform. The problem with the FBI is, of course, that it's kind of rotten in many ways in terms of the groups that it was targeting from its outset. But there have been reforms. It would need a lot more oversight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good person to ask that question would be Chip Gibbons of Defending Rights and Dissent. What should be done about the FBI? Because yes, I don't think it's leave it to the states.
Yeah, I don't want there to not be a federalized police force and just have like Mississippi police be the final say on like the crimes that are happening there, including, you know, in an ideal world, the FBI could lead an investigation to this lynching that we just saw, but not in Trump's America. In a moment, we'll be talking to Zachary Foster, but first, a word from some of our sponsors. Are you secretly cleaning with microplastics? I mean, gosh, I don't even like thinking about how many microplastics I've probably consumed in my life. But those detergent pods, they may not make your clean as you think. We've all heard this. It's tough to stomach, but no pun intended, we're eating a credit card's worth of plastic a week. Ugh. And to limit microplastics, though, because of this anxiety I have, Blue Land is the best place for me to go. That's why I've made the switch to Blue Land across all the cleaning products around my house and around this office. Their products meet the highest standard of clean. They are effective, yet gentle on my family and the planet. Blue Land was also named an EPA Safer Choice Partner of the Year. From cleaning sprays and toilet bowl cleaner to dishwasher and laundry detergent tablets, Blue Land's formulas are 100% microplastic free, made with certified clean ingredients free from chlorine, bleach, and harsh chemicals that are safe to use around my cats. This is, now that I'm a cat owner, I like looking up all of those cleaning products I had in my house with bleach and stuff like that, you know, I was using Blue Land before, but I ended up just throwing them all out because I can't use them around the cats, but I can use Blue Land. I love not having to choose between the safe option and what gets my house actually clean. Blue Land is on a mission to make it easy for everyone to make sustainable choices. Blue Land products are independently tested to perform alongside major brands and are free of dyes, bleach, and harsh chemicals. You can get the dishwasher tablets. They're great. They come in an adorable little tin. The laundry tablets, which are awesome. And if you are in a small space like myself in an apartment, it's also just like better and more efficient in terms of your space. They also have toilet tablets that work on clearing that lime scale and all that stuff. Blue Land has a special offer for our listeners. Right now, get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/majority. You won't want to miss this. Blueland.com/majority for 15% off. That's blueland.com/majority for 15% off. Another sponsor of ours, Nutrafol. If you're dealing with hair issues like thinning or shedding, but are totally stuck on what to do next because, you know, you don't want to deal with a prescription and pharmaceuticals and all of that. There are a lot of products out there, but Nutrafol is one that you should give a closer look to. It's not just hype. It's physician formulated, clinically tested, and even recommended by dermatologists. I have a friend of mine who had some severe health issues a few years ago, and she started losing her hair. And Nutrafol was her go-to, and it was like a miracle worker for her, at the very least. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. You can feel great about what you're putting into your body since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF content certified, the gold standard in third-party certification for supplements. While many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies, Nutrafol clinically tests final formulations to ensure their efficacy using a variety of hair measurement tools like hair counts and pull tests to assess growth, quality, shedding, and texture. Adding Nutrafol into your daily routine is simple. see thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering you $10 off your first month's subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter promo code TMR10. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR10. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR10. Links below in the video and episode descriptions. And lastly, we always speak incredibly highly of current affairs, and now we have a little advertisement and a reason to do so. If you like deep, thoughtful, progressive analysis, which of course Majority Report listeners do, you will love the print or digital edition of Current Affairs magazine. Current Affairs combines intelligent commentary, biting political satire, and gorgeous artwork to produce one of the country's most elegant and informative magazines, and it is all ad-free. Current Affairs is a fantastic complement to the Majority Report's work, delivering hard-hitting, totally independent, and entertaining coverage of the most important political, social, and economic issues of our time. I've got to say, I've been obsessing about the things like the Gaza death toll being so wildly undercounted. Current Affairs has the best piece on it and is like the kind of outlet that will bravely publish that kind of thing that I've seen so far. Speaking about how it's likely hundreds of thousands instead of the tens of thousands being reported in the West, let alone just Nathan Robinson being one of the best people in our space and having been so for a very long time. You trust him to analyze politics of the day from a progressive perspective and also a well-researched one, and all the people he works with are held to that standard as well. So Current Affairs is awesome, and if you use code Majority Report, one word, you can get 30% off for a year on any subscription of your choice. Go to currentaffairs.org/subscribe and enter the code Majority Report at checkout. Again, one word, Majority Report. If you go to currentaffairs.org/subscribe, enter Majority Report at checkout. This offer expires October 31st. Quick break, and when we come back, we'll be talking to Zachary Foster. We are back, and we are joined once again by friend of the show, Zachary Foster, historian of Palestine, Ph.D. in Near Eastern Studies, and contributor to the Palestine Nexus newsletter, which everyone should subscribe to. Zach, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Emma.
Of course. So Gaza City is burning. That is not a phrase that I said. It is actually what the Israeli Defense Minister, Israel Katz, tweeted out in glee yesterday. The Israeli government announced this ground invasion of the north of Gaza a few weeks ago, but now they are following through on it. By all accounts, this is a new level of horror. The bombing has been absolutely overwhelming, and now prior to the ground invasion, and now it has begun. What are you seeing about what's happening right now in the north of the Gaza Strip?
Israel announced its plans to invade Gaza City for the nth time and has dropped something like 850 bombs, has hit 850 targets in Gaza over the past week. We're talking about 150 bombs a day in an area that has been pulverized, in an area that most analysts are likening to the scenes we saw in Dresden after World War II. That's the area that Israel is continuing to bomb relentlessly. We are seeing hundreds of thousands of Palestinians flee Gaza City on foot, by truck, by car, however they can. Although we're also learning that a majority of Palestinians in Gaza City can't afford to leave.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because this siege has many impacts. Obviously, the most deadly one is the forced starvation by the Israeli government. But they're also not allowing things in like fuel. So it's extremely expensive to get a ride anywhere because it's scarce. They're desperate. Tents, I'm reading, are becoming too expensive for folks. So, Israel's bombing the places, the safe zones, right, where they say they're supposed to go. And those are the people that are in tents. And then if a tent gets destroyed and you survive somehow, you can't get a new one because those are too expensive.
Palestine Nexus contributor Rama Hussein just posted the other day it's going to cost me $2,000 to rent a truck for a few hours to transport her belongings from Gaza City to the south. Who has $2,000 in Gaza? Who has any money in Gaza at all? The economy has been decimated. A tent, like you said, costs upwards of $1,000. Where do you get that money from? People have no way to flee. They have no money to move their belongings. And even if they move south, where are they going to go? 90% of the Gaza Strip is declared an Israeli military zone. And that is to say, it's a kill zone. If you enter it, you're at risk of being shot by a drone, killed by a tank shell, attacked by these armored personnel carriers, these robot bombs. I don't even know what to call them. Israel, over the past couple of weeks, is now embracing new military technology, as far as we can tell, where they're putting explosive devices inside these armored personnel carriers that are going around Gaza City and blowing up entire city blocks. This is in addition to the mass destruction of every remaining tower in Gaza. Over the past week, Bibi Netanyahu bragged about bringing down something like 50 towers left in Gaza. The Israeli army isn't even going after Hamas anymore. They don't even claim to. They're claiming to completely eradicate all physical infrastructure, flatten Gaza, nowhere to live, nowhere to sleep, no shelter, no homes, no schools, no roads, no water infrastructure, no cemeteries, no mosques, no churches, nothing. Just scorched earth. That's what Israel's doing in Gaza. It's what it did in Rafah. It's what it's doing in Khan Yunis. It's what it already did in Beit Lahia in the north and Jabalia. Israel's plan is to flatten the entirety of the strip, make it completely unlivable, so that over the course of the next year or two, Palestinians will continue to move south, at which point they will be forced to leave Gaza because Gaza is unlivable. And that's what Israel's plan is.
Can we put up this map here? This was from the UN report, which, as we headlined yesterday, the UN Commission officially said Israel has committed genocide. I find the past tense a little bit troubling, given the fact that it's ongoing. Also, the figures that they're using, we should say, the current population being 2.1 million. I still go back to Trump months ago saying 1.7 to 1.8 million are left. That would make sense given the fact that hundreds of thousands actually are dead. But this is the evacuation order here. And you can see for the podcast audience, basically the white is supposed to be the safe zone in the south. But scroll up slightly here, Matt. You can see the north of Gaza and Gaza City up there. You would have to pass through the purple zone, which is a kill zone, the militarized zone, that for that ethnic cleansing to happen. So even if they're the folks that are able to abide by the order to leave their home are very much at risk of just being bombed or shot because there's no way to move to the area they're asking them to move without being in the militarized kill zone.
An IDF source claimed that for about 48 hours, they would allow Palestinians access to a single access road that in which they would be able to move from the north to the south. At the same time that Israel has shut off internet in the north. We just received reports just a few hours ago that the Israeli army has shut off internet. Now, let me ask you this, Emma. How am I supposed to know which roads I'm allowed to travel on if I can't access the internet? I mean, it's a death march is what it is. Not just because you have 1 million people living in Gaza City, many of whom have, forget about having the funds to move. You have people, tens of thousands of people, sick, diseased, injured, elderly people, small children. How are all these people supposed to move in 48 hours? It's a death march, the same march that Armenians were sent on in World War I, the same march that millions of Jews were sent on in World War II, is exactly the same march that millions of Palestinians are now being sent on. It's a death march.
And what are you hearing about those Palestinian men that last week there were images of them being basically lined up and shuttled to God knows where? We still have very little information about what happened. Where did that occur, Zach? I'm sorry if I blanked on it.
last week, the Israeli army rounded up something like 1,500 Palestinian men in the West Bank city, the occupied city of Tulkarm, which is in the West Bank, about an hour and a half west of Ramallah or Nablus. And it's an hour and a half, right, because of the 18 checkpoints you have to pass through. I mean, it's a 20-minute drive. But what we saw was thousands of Palestinian men. And a source in Tulkarm shared with me that the Israeli army just literally went door to door. They just walked into shops, they walked into restaurants, they walked into homes, grabbing every Palestinian man that they could find. And what does that remind you of, Emma? I'll tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of the scenes after the Nazi army invaded Poland and occupied Poland in 1939, rounding up Jewish families, lining them up in single file lines, shipping them off to ghettos, shipping them off to concentration camps, which is exactly where those Palestinian men are going. Where are they going? They're winding up in Israel's torture dungeons, where over the past 2 years, 60 Palestinian men and women have been murdered. They've been tortured to death. They've been starved to death. You have cases of Palestinian men being raped inside Israeli torture dungeons.
I mean, that video that we can't play here, but if people want to see it, and there are a lot of things we have to bear witness to, it's our responsibility, but you can choose, of course, what to protect yourself from. But there is a video of a bunch of IDF soldiers putting up their shields, thinking that they were protecting it from the camera, but you can see, obviously, what's happening. They're raping, one of the IDF soldiers is raping a prisoner.
We're witnessing the West Bank turn into Gaza in slow motion. It's happening slowly, but everything we've seen in Gaza over the past years is now happening in the West Bank. We're talking about 40,000 plus Palestinians ethnically cleansed from the Tulkarm, Nur Shams, and Jenin refugee camps. They were woken up in the middle of the night, forced to leave their homes for having committed the crime of being expelled from their homes in 1948. That's why they're in the refugee camps in the West Bank. And so we're seeing mass ethnic cleansing happening. We're seeing mass arrests happening. We're seeing mass killings happening. We're seeing the murder of journalists. We're seeing the confiscation of land. We're seeing the expansion of the Israeli settlement enterprise. Just this past week, Bezalel Smotrich is announcing plans to build something like 3,500 new housing units in the E1 zone, that famous zone that the European Union and the United States said was a red line for the past 30 years, that if you build in the E1 zone, you would effectively be dissecting the West Bank into two sections, thereby rendering a contiguous Palestinian state in the West Bank effectively impossible. I mean, it's been impossible for a long time, but this is a final nail in that coffin. And that's what they just announced last week.
What do you make of this turn to the West Bank in that way, their attempts to make it into Gaza? I mean, they want to just be openly bombing. They're bombing the West Bank right now in the way that they were mowing the lawn in Gaza prior to October 7th, you know. So it's an escalation, obviously. But the fact that they're escalating beyond settler tactics there means, I mean, there's just nothing left to bomb in Gaza. They're bombing rubble, and it seems like their campaign of mass starvation, you know, might be a little bit just more efficient for them, and no one's stopping them.
No one is stopping the mass starvation campaign. Every day, the Gaza Health Ministry reports 4, 5, 10 Palestinians dying from malnutrition, being starved to death. And that's because Israel controls every entry and exit point in the Gaza Strip and decides exactly how much food enters the Gaza Strip. We had 2 weeks ago, the UN declared a famine in the north of Gaza.
And you talk about historical examples, Zach. I mean, it's the Warsaw Ghetto.
It's unconscionable that the world is allowing the Israeli government to starve to death 2 million people. We have reports every day. I mean, if you just open Twitter, open Instagram, open TikTok, every single day I receive a half dozen messages from Palestinians saying, I'm starving to death. I haven't eaten in 3 days. I haven't eaten anything but moldy bread in 3 weeks. These are the reports we're seeing. Israel has destroyed all the 98% of the agricultural land in Gaza has been destroyed, so you can't grow anything in Gaza anymore. So that means that all the food that Palestinians have access to in the Gaza Strip right now is food that has made it into the Gaza Strip via one of 3 or 4 Israeli-controlled checkpoints, where Palestinians are then forced to travel 10, 15 kilometers to these aid sites, these GHF aid sites, where every day, to this day, they're being slaughtered. Every day. The Gaza Health Ministry reports however many Palestinians have been starved to death in the past 24 hours. Now they're also breaking down how many Palestinians were murdered trying to collect a box of aid, trying to collect some meager food rations. By the way, those boxes, those GHF boxes of aid include things like pasta. Well, you need water to cook pasta, and there's no fresh water in Gaza. Right. So they're being given boxes of fake food that they can't even eat. And then you have the Israeli military aid sites, such as in the north of Gaza, where GHF doesn't operate because Israel is trying to push all Palestinians to the south. But there's the Zikim aid point in the north, where it's the same story as the GHF sites. Every day, 5, 10, 15 Palestinians are slaughtered to death trying to grab a bag of flour. That's what Israel's doing. It's a slow, grinding starvation. It's a grinding genocide where Israel can kill 100 Palestinians a day without the world caring. And that was I'm quoting Israeli officials when I say that.
They are acting with a level of impunity that is a direct result of U.S. Complicity, Western complicity. We do know now that the EU is finally talking about sanctions, finally. And it's far too late. But what do you make of that shift in terms of like France recognizing Palestine as a state, Canada doing the same? I know it's symbolic, but these are kind of diplomatic pressure points that I'm hoping at the very least has some sort of effect.
Well, the declaration by France and Canada and others calling for the establishment or recognizing the establishment of a Palestinian state is about as important as the ICJ case brought before Israel in January 2024, in which the ICJ declared that there's a risk of genocide, thus requiring all member states of the UN, who are all party to the Genocide Prevention Convention of 1948, they're all required to take action, not issue condemnations, but take action. Right. And no one's taking action. And that's the fundamental problem with all of these declarations. I don't care what you say. Palestinians can't eat your words. They need food. They need water. They need medicine. They need shelter. They need an end to the aerial bombardment. And issuing strongly worded statements condemning Israeli aggression in Qatar, condemning Israeli aggression in Tunisia, condemning Israeli aggression in Iran and Lebanon and Syria and the West Bank and Gaza, and now in Israel proper, where in the past 24 hours, the Israeli government has ethnically cleansed a few dozen Palestinians from Israel proper,
right?
A Palestinian Bedouin village in the south. So Israel is carrying out atrocities quite literally wherever it can. And strongly worded statements do nothing to stop those acts of aggression. We need action, not words.
Well, you mentioned how many countries Israel has bombed, and I mean they're just, if these were European countries with Renaissance architecture, the white people would be like losing their minds if this were the case. But these are Muslim countries, Arab countries, some Iran, obviously Persian, but they bombed Iran, they bombed Syria. They bombed Tunisia, of course, as you mentioned, striking that aid ship at port. Yemen, Qatar, Lebanon, and of course Palestine. Like this is Nazi Germany stuff. I mean, they are fighting a major expansionist regional war, but you can't get white Westerners to care. I don't know what else there is to say.
In the waning years of apartheid, South Africa's rule in South Africa, that regime went on a killing spree all across the region.
Yeah.
Zimbabwe, Botswana, what was then Rhodesia, all of these countries, because you had African national leaders, resistance leaders taking shelter in these places. It was a quite similar story where it just went on a bombing campaign, an invasion campaign, a killing campaign everywhere. And it represents the last gasp of empire, the last gasp of when you lose the ability to maintain control via peaceful means, you pursue violent means. And you see the same thing happening with the U.S. empire as well, in which we're bombing Iran, we're bombing Yemen, we're bombing boats thousands of miles away off the coast of Venezuela and Colombia. It's this inability to solve your problems through diplomacy, through peaceful means. You resort to violence, and that's exactly what Israel's doing. And it's just completely. It's a rogue state, right? There's no restraints anymore, no even pretense of restraints. Right? It used to be that when Israel carried out these attacks in other countries, they would feign ignorance. What?
They're defending themselves. Yeah.
Right. And now they're owning up to it. They're embracing it. We attacked Hamas in Qatar. We bombed the United States' closest ally in the Middle East, aside from Israel, and they're owning up to it.
Well, we have a president that's allowing that. And, it's amazing. Lastly here, Zach, to see Trump do the dance that Biden did about how mad he is. And Biden prided himself on his foreign policy, but in part, it's like Trump doesn't have, it doesn't flatter his ego, and he doesn't have the attention span. So he'll be pissed off too, but not change anything, obviously. And he also got that major campaign donation where he wants Israel to be able to do what it wants, just wrap it up by the end of the year, is what he's saying.
Trump has never been a person interested in details. He likes headlines. He likes accolades. He likes praise. He clearly, I think, doesn't think all that much of Netanyahu, while at the same time is probably also scared of Netanyahu. He understands Netanyahu's reach in the United States, the power that Israel has to murder, assassinate, invade, occupy, kill whoever it wants. And I think Trump is probably a little bit afraid of Netanyahu.
Who knows what Netanyahu has on him, if we're going to go full tinfoil hat on who might have been an Israeli intelligence asset.
Max Blumenthal reported at the Gray Zone, was it last week, that Israeli officials inside the White House, that he has a source who told him Israeli officials planted spying devices, listening devices on the White House lawn during Netanyahu's most recent visit. We know as well that the Israeli government has a long history of planting spying devices inside the personal residences of other heads of state, including in the United Kingdom and including in the United States.
Bill Clinton, the Israeli government knew, I believe, about the Monica Lewinsky affair fairly before that broke to the public too. How did that happen? Yeah.
So this is a country that has a long history of spying on its friends, spying on its allies, including and especially the United States and the UK. It's a country that has no shame whatsoever in blackmailing whoever it wants, including UN official Richard Goldstone, who was the lead author of the Goldstone Report, which described Israel's 2008-2009 invasion in Gaza. He described the goal of that operation, whose aim was to terrorize the civilian population of Gaza. Those are his words. And that was the goal of the operation. They blackmailed him. He recanted the report, although his staff did not. So Israel has a long, long history of blackmail, of bribery. Obviously, we know what happened to Karim Khan after he issued the arrest warrants for Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. They blackmailed, certainly tried to blackmail Karim Khan, who recently, I believe, resigned, perhaps owing to that blackmail. This is just a long-standing practice of the Israeli government for decades. You could almost say it's part of the DNA of Israel. It blackmails Palestinians. It blackmails Israelis. It blackmails heads of state around the world. There is no one that is off limits to the state of Israel, not even the U.S. president himself.
Well, Zach, really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, everyone. Check out Palestine Nexus newsletter, essential source in these times. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Quick break, folks, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Michelle Eisen. We are back, and we are joined now by Michelle Eisen, national leader of Starbucks Workers United and a 15-year Starbucks barista veteran. Michelle, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Welcome back. We've had you on before, and I wanted to get a little bit of an update from you because earlier this week, there was a new report from the Institute for Policy Studies that showed that the new CEO of Starbucks, Brian Niccol, made $95.8 million last year, and the median barista made $14,674. I wrote down that exact figure because that's a ratio of 6,666 to, it's a little satanic, to 1. And that is the largest of, the joke, largest of all S&P 500 companies, which is incredible. So just your reaction to that as obviously the national leader of Starbucks Workers United.
Well, obviously you can't make that number up. And it is incredibly fitting given the situation that most Starbucks workers feel like they find themselves in. I think it's really important to note, you said his salary last year, he only worked for the company for 4 months last year. He was hired in September. So that's not like a 12-month salary. That's what he made in 4 months with the company. And that was 6,666 times more than the average barista made in the year, not what the average barista made in 4 months. So he made that in 4 months. The average barista made that in a year. We're not dealing with a small company. This is not a mom and pop coffee company that can't afford to pay its workers a living wage. I mean, every company should pay its workers a living wage, but we're dealing with a multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporation who can afford to pay its CEO $96 million in 4 months. Why can't it afford to pay its workers? The workers who run these stores every single day, the workers who most would say are responsible for bringing in the billions of dollars of profit that this company pulls in every year. It's sad, it's disappointing, and it's completely unnecessary. Like, there's no reason so many Starbucks baristas should rely on, federally funded medical, like this. Right. What is going on here? That's just,
well, we're subsidized. I mean, even if you want to expand it, like, all of us as a country are subsidizing the poor labor practices of not just Starbucks, but you hear this about Walmart employees. Mm-hmm. You hear this about, whatever, other major companies around the country. We're subsidizing corporate greed because they should be providing these things for their workers, and they have the means to. But instead, it's let's break records on CEO pay versus worker pay.
Yeah, it really is like they are out to break the worst possible records you could be out to try to break. Yes. Which is coming from a company like Starbucks, who for decades has prided themselves on being a better company, right? They claim to be the first to offer the level of health benefits that they offer. They claim to be the first to offer those to part-time employees. There are a lot of things that they are out there still patting themselves on the back for. And the reality is that they are not that company anymore. What I think is, I don't know if ironic is the right word, but what is certainly laughable is that the entire sort of mantra of Brian Niccol since he stepped into this role was trying to get the company back to its roots, like trying to get back to Starbucks. That's his initiative. And yet every policy that he has rolled out since he stepped into this role just over a year ago has actually gotten us further away from that. And the way that the employees are being treated, the way that the workers who run these stores are being treated under his reign, if you will, is completely contrary to what the company has always said they prided themselves on. So it really is. We are at a point right now in the country and with this company where it is we're seeing this consolidation of wealth and power to this very select few. And what it is inevitably doing is causing workers to stand up and fight for what they know they deserve and what they feel like they have a right to. And it is fueling the organizing for our campaign, I think, across the country, but certainly for our campaign. We have seen organizing numbers surge since Brian Nickel took this role. We've organized an additional 155 stores. That's something like 2,600 Starbucks baristas. It's like on average, about 3 stores a week since he became CEO, which is these are huge numbers. And they are, in my opinion, directly correlated to the current state of the country and the fact that the policies that he has rolled out since he has stepped in have only made baristas' jobs harder.
Well, I mean, some of the government programs that I read the article from Lynn Fox, the SPWU president, and in these times, I mean, they were speaking about how Starbucks baristas are reliant on things like SNAP and Medicaid, which are getting gutted by the Trump administration. So in terms of the urgency of what you're talking about, that makes total sense. But also, the piece outlines all of these like crazy changes that the new CEO has undertaken since taking over later last year. What have some of those changes been, and what do you feel like their role is in accelerating the drive to organize amongst the workforce?
Like I said, the policies he has rolled out under the guise of this Back to Starbucks plan have actually made baristas' jobs harder, made these cafes less habitable, I guess is maybe the best word. So a few that rolled out just within a few months of him stepping in. Starbucks kind of had this open door policy, a very community policy. I started with this company in 2010, so I know how these stores run. I know what these cafes are typically like, these lobbies are like. And you could come in, you could get a glass of water, you could use the restroom, no questions asked. This wasn't like you need to make a purchase. So in January, they rolled out this policy that essentially slammed that open door shut. And you could not come in unless you were making a purchase to use the restroom or to get a cup of water, which is really, you're putting baristas in a very, very, very tight spot, in a bad position, because they're the ones inevitably stuck with enforcing these policies that are incredibly unpopular. This isn't, we can go back and forth about what type of people or what type of crowds they were trying to discourage from coming into these cafes, which is just really awful to think about. But let's just say that is not the direction that we're going in. There are lots of regular customers who I would see, a few times a day. They'd go on a 5 a.m. run, stop into the cafe to get a cup of water before they went home and showered and got dressed, and then came back inevitably to get their coffee. I now have to tell this person, who I know is going to make a purchase at some point today, that they cannot have this cup of water that they've been getting for the last 10 years. Like, what are we doing? Like, what is the point of this other than to put workers in a very potentially dangerous situation? Maybe this customer is just annoyed and they're still going to come back, but maybe the person I'm telling that they can't use the bathroom is not going to respond in that way. And so not only am I putting myself possibly at risk and my fellow coworkers at risk, but I'm also taking time away from the floor where I could be helping the customers who are making a purchase to have this conversation with somebody, as opposed to just, letting them use the restroom or giving them a cup of water. That was one. For me, on top of rolling these out, they also pulled workers out to do trainings, like paid trainings, to teach us how to tell customers they could no longer use the bathroom and no longer have a cup of water. So that right there is, millions of dollars of training to train us how to do these things.
Instead of agreeing to a fair contract, we should add.
Instead of agreeing to a fair contract. Yes, yeah. We are, we just hit the 4-year anniversary of the store that I worked at filing our union petition, and we're still without a contract. So resources just going to the wrong place. The other very, very unnecessary policy change was a more restrictive dress code. So actually a regressive dress code, as opposed to what we were. And again, not entirely certain why. Like all of a sudden baristas have, can only wear a black shirt, and their jeans have to be, within this color frame of wash. And there's all of these different things happening. And what it's leading to is, because it's being enforced irregularly, workers are being sent home because they show up and they're wearing the wrong shade of black. Like just the most ridiculous things. So now these stores that have been notoriously understaffed for, at this point, years, are that much more understaffed because somebody is coming in trying to do the right thing, thinking they're showing up in dress code, even though it's ridiculous. And then their manager is like, sorry, you're going to have to go home and change if you want to come back and work. And, so you're cutting back on staff that's already pretty thin. That was one of the other policies that we saw. And of course, the one that I think is probably the most controversial is this new back to writing on cups with Sharpies. If you stepped into a Starbucks anytime in the 2010s, you would see the barista at the register with their Sharpie, and you would place your order, and they would mark your cup, and they would say, "Can I have your name?" And they put your name on the cup. And, that was the purpose of the marking cups and the purpose of the Sharpies. Right around 2015, we replaced Sharpies with printers. We would put everything in, including your name still, and it would print out on a sticker and it would be put on the cup. And I remember thinking, wow, Sharpie, like 3M is probably going to take a hit. Like we were going through so many Sharpies a week that this is probably going to cause something. But, that kind of just went away. And it was a little bit sad to see something like that go. But considering the volume of orders, it was kind of a necessary progression. So in walks Brian, and he's like, we're going to write on cups again, but we're not going to put your name, and we're not going to have it be the person at the point of sale where it makes the most sense. We're going to make it so that the barista who's responsible for producing your beverages, like on bar, also has to stop in between every beverage and write an affirmation or a positive message on your cup. And it can't be the name. It can't just be writing the person's name. It has to be something, super. And that rolled out, and I was like, wow, this is interesting. It's going to create some problems. And, it initially rolled out with absolutely no guidelines. And that's, generally speaking, not great. It was fun for a minute, but not great.
No guidelines on the affirmations?
There was not initially, no. And then, now that has progressed into this very detailed disciplinary progressive track for writing on cups. So here's all the list of things you can't do. Here's what you can't write. Here's the categories you have to avoid. But you still need to do this on every single cup, or you could get disciplined for it. And you still have to maintain getting these beverages out as quickly as possible. So these are the things, just since he stepped in, that workers are dealing with. And there's nothing that he has implemented that has made workers' jobs any easier. What the union is demanding, I think the last time I spoke to you all was December of last year, when we were in the middle of bargaining. It was actually what ended up being our final bargaining session of that period. And we were incredibly hopeful. We had spent 9 pretty productive, solid months going back and forth with the company. We had reached some tentative agreements on some really substantial, significant non-economic proposals, and we were waiting for a response to our economic package. And I was hopeful, like the company had really sort of turned the other cheek a few months prior, and had seemed committed to this, what they called this new path forward, to work on this foundational framework for contract language. And again, they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation, so we didn't think that we were going to have such an issue solving the economic problems, but we did. They showed up with a response to our package, which offered 0 financial improvement in the first year of the contract, and then only a 1.5% raise for the remainder years of the contract. Just literally pennies, like actually pennies. And so we couldn't accept that. It led to our largest action on in the campaign's history, which was 5,000 Starbucks baristas on strike through Christmas Eve of last year. And then the company kind of came back and said, okay, well, we'll enter into some mediation. And we were like, okay, great, let's continue the conversations. And now, it's pretty clear. I think Lynn really hit the nail on the head in that op-ed that she wrote, that the mediation was a delay tactic and kind of just to quiet things down while some financial reports on the company were put out there. And that showed no progress. So what we've been doing in the last year is just continuing to organizing like crazy. These policies have been very unpopular. So workers are realizing very quickly that the only way that we stand a chance within Starbucks is to organize and to get this contract. So we're 12,000 strong now and willing to do, we will do whatever it takes to get this contract and to finalize it and to hopefully improve conditions in these stores.
Two little remarks. One is that thing about the affirmation is literally almost like that the Office Space flare thing with Jennifer Aniston not having enough flare. Okay, that's just amazing how this corporate BS is still going on. And two, I mean, it's the fastest growing union campaign in modern history. The 12,000 workers joining since December 2021, since you guys kicked this off. And the stalling tactic, could you expand upon that a little bit? Because, right now, the Trump administration has gutted the National Labor Relations Board. So my anticipation is that this other companies are going to keep trying to stall because since he's gutted it, I don't think they can reach a quorum. And the government's on their side basically if they want to just play this out. It doesn't seem like there's going to be any enforcement on the federal level.
So unfortunately, at least when you get to the bargaining side of all of this, there's very little protections for the bargaining process, even under like a labor-friendly president. Our labor laws just don't protect once there's a lot to sort of govern and guidance the getting to the point of unionizing process, but there's not a whole lot to govern and guidance the actual securing the contract. And so, yes, what he is doing, what Trump is doing in office to the NLRB and all of those things, it's awful and it's terrifying, and it absolutely, could cause a lot of issues for folks that are attempting to get to the point of unionizing. But what has always secured a contract in this country has been the pressure that workers have put on companies around the bargaining process, outside of the bargaining room or outside of the table, as we would say. It's showing them that we have the power to do what it takes to force their hand to give us this contract. What is, I think, the most disappointing when we're dealing with Starbucks, and again, I keep going back to this sort of idealism that this is supposed to be a better company. Like, why are we having to fight this hard for things that they could easily afford to give us? I mean, on top of the $96 million that Brian made in the first 4 months of his employment, they spent $81 million on a 3-day managers conference in Vegas in June. And, privately, they said to the union, hey, let us just get through this training for our managers. We need to get through this manager training in Vegas, and then we'll get back to talking about the contract. And we were like, okay, handle your business, and then we definitely want to talk to you. And it ended up being this, multi-million dollar, I'll keep using the word conference in, quotations because that's what they're calling it. But, you have performers like Bruno Mars and Janelle Monáe, and like they're giving swag bags, and, all of the managers were flown in from their various stores. And guess who was running the stores for the week? The baristas, who you don't want to give enough respect to make sure that they have a living wage or enough hours to access the benefits that you offer.
Well, they're also, they're creating a divide too among the workforce in a way, right? And create that's cheaper for them in terms of, and then setting the precedent of giving you guys a fair contract, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, our calculations are that they could settle the economic side of this contract with us, a multi-year, economic side of this contract with us for less than a day's worth of sales. Like less than a single day's worth of sales could settle this. And you end with labor peace, right? You don't have to worry about the fact that your workers are so unsettled that, you know, we are going to have to take further action. So you get labor peace out of it. And hey, maybe you actually solve some of the issues that are taking place in these stores that are keeping customers away. You know, like we know that customers are still staying away from Starbucks. We have presented many, many, many options to the company to help solve some of the issues in these cafes. We run the cafes every day, are run by these baristas. They know what it takes to solve some of the issues that are keeping the customers out of these stores. And we want to be a part of those conversations because, you know, selfishly, it would help make our lives a lot easier if we could help with some of these policies that we have to enforce and enact every single day. But we don't want the company to fail. We would like the customers to come back. You know, we're still here fighting because we want to make things better. Otherwise, what would the point of all of this be? So we're just, the ball is in their court. You know, like we've made a lot of offers. We've asked Brian himself to step into bargaining. He is, you know, he's not responded, at least to the best of my knowledge.
Lastly, Leftist Rage writes in, I would love to know the best way I can support my Starbucks barista. Just boycott and stop buying there, or is there something more impactful as a customer? I love my baristas. What would be your recommendation, Michelle, for how our audience can help best support the baristas?
So, I mean, if you're a regular customer and you have those baristas that you love and you support, disappearing on them, I don't think is the right thing to do right now. What I will say is that we are committed to doing whatever it takes to finalize this contract. If we need to strike, if necessary, we will do that. We've already got commitments from thousands of allies who have agreed not to cross the picket line should we need to go on strike in the future. So I think just paying attention to what's going on. In the meantime, supporting your baristas. You know, you just heard what the median income is for the average barista. So if you can afford to drop a couple dollars in that tip jar, please do. If you visit our website, starbucksworkersunited.org, there's a lot of information about our like current actions, current drives. There's a link to make a donation to our Solidarity Fund, which would be used for, you know, strike purposes should we need to go on strike. There's also a link to our merch shop, which has some really just like kick-ass.
I gotta get some of that.
Kick-ass merch designed by like people on the campaign, union made, and those funds also go into that fund as well. And then if a call is made to not cross a picket line or to support in any way, just whatever your willingness is to do that, that would go an incredibly long way to helping us secure this first contract. We have some of, you know, there's only a few remaining demands. We need better hours. You know, there are workers who want to access Starbucks's benefits and can't because there's no guarantee that they're even going to get the hours they need to access that. Better take-home pay, because we already know what that looks like, as had been illustrated. Right. And there's still hundreds of unresolved unfair labor practice charges that are just hanging in the air that the company has promised to resolve over a year ago. And there were just 125 new ones filed at the beginning of 2025. You know, this is a company that shows like it seems regressive right now with the way that it's treating its workers. And that's just not good for their brand. You know, like if even if you don't care about the workers at all, I hope that's not the case. Even if you don't care about the people who are responsible for creating the atmosphere that keeps the customers coming back day in and day out, you have to recognize that it looks really bad when you're continuing to violate U.S. labor law and pay the price tag that comes along with that. And I don't just mean, you know, we know there's no fiscal
reputationally.
Yeah, reputationally. And, you know, someone has to defend these charges. And that's like you're paying tens of $millions to firms like Littler Mendelson to go in and repeatedly lose in court. You know, like that has to be something that needs to be recognized as not a good look. So yeah, just whatever you can do to support support your baristas. We will be very public about whatever calls need to be made, but the time is now.
One last question, because our audience really wants to help here. Out West writes in, question for the guests: are there ways non-Starbucks local coffee shop baristas could get in touch and resources about strategies to unionize their shops?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach out the same way, through our website. You don't have to be a Starbucks worker. We are organized under Workers United, which is a long-standing labor union in the country, and it's affiliated with SEIU. So both unions also have organized cafe coffee workers from different companies, and we would be happy to get you in contact with whomever you need to be in contact with for that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Michelle, a national leader of Starbucks Workers United, 15-year Starbucks barista veteran. Thanks so much for coming back on the show, and we'd love to have you back in a few months giving us an update, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, folks, with that, we're going to wrap up the free part of the show and head into the not free part, the fun half, where we will read your IMs, take your calls maybe. We actually have a lot to get to clips-wise today. I mean, these hearings, Congress kicking back up.
Kash Patel's getting roasted.
Yeah, it's piling up.
Hell yeah. All right, we'll do a deep dive.
Do you want to
into
sample
that.
one for the free half people before
Let's do it. Let's do it.
This is one. People just said the Swalwell stuff, so I haven't even really watched this clip, but this is Eric Swalwell question.
Little teaser.
Kash Patel here. Let's take a look at this.
Who did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? Yes or no?
Why don't you try spelling it out?
Yes
if you're gonna
or
mock
no, Director?
Use the alphabet.
Yes or no?
No.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Kash
Tim
has
Robinson.
such fast wit.
Yeah. Why don't you try spelling it out for me? Stop talking to me so meanly.
It's a Tim Robinson character. I feel like I'm watching Friendship.
I
but-
know. I know.
I'm trying.
Please, you're stressing me out right now. Okay.
God, you're so fucking stupid.
Who did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files? Yes or no?
Why don't you try spelling it out?
Yes
if
or
you're gonna mock
no, Director?
Use the alphabet.
Yes or no?
No. A, B, C.
Director,
D, F.
sounds like you don't want to tell us. Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name was in the Epstein files?
Why don't you try serving your
Director,
constituency
did
by
you tell the
focusing on
Attorney
reducing
General
violent
that Donald
crime in this
Trump's name-
country and the number of pedophiles that are
Director,
illegally
reclaiming
harbored
my time,
in your
Director.
sanctuary cities in
Director,
California?
reclaiming
I'll
my
work with
time.
you on that. Do
Regular
you
order,
wanna
Mr.
work with us
Chairman.
on that?
Director,
I
reclaiming my
belong to the
time.
gentleman from California.
Did you tell the Attorney General that Donald Trump's name is in the Epstein files?
Question
Yes or no?
has been asked and answered.
You've not answered it, and we will take your evasiveness as a consciousness of guilt.
Whoo! God, they're just. Brian, you're a boxing fan. What would
Big
you
time.
What would you liken that interaction to?
I would say that's a one-punch knockout.
Oh boy!
Probably first round.
But
Straight right?
there is no one to ring the bell here, though, because he's just going to be laying out there and taking some more hits.
I would say this thing about why don't you protect your constituents, and he mentions human trafficking. There is this insane piece that people need to read.
In The Guardian.
In The Guardian, revealed Trump administration retreats on combating human trafficking and child exploitation.
Let's just read the first few paragraphs of that. I'll read it here just because it's, I mean, while we're on it. The Trump administration has aggressively rolled back efforts across the federal government to combat human trafficking, a Guardian investigation has found. The sweeping retreat threatens to negate decades of progress in the drive to prevent sexual slavery, forced labor, and child sexual exploitation, according to legal experts, former government officials, and anti-trafficking advocates. They say the administration's moves are impeding efforts to prosecute perpetrators and protect survivors in the United States and around the world. This paragraph that gets a little more specific here. Under Trump, key initiatives for fighting human trafficking have been cut back at the U.S. Department of State, Department of Justice, Department of Labor, Department of Health and Human Services, and the Department of Homeland Security, The Guardian found. Senior officials and other staffers have been forced out, workers shifted to other priorities. Like immigration?
That's what it is.
There it is. Yep. And grants delayed or canceled. At DHS, Trump has ordered agents to formally dedicated to investigating and arresting human traffickers to focus on deporting immigrants. Current and former DHS staffers interviewed by The Guardian confirmed that these investigators' day-to-day work has been broadly shifted towards deportations and away from investigating major crimes with real victims. At the State Department, the Trump administration slashed more than 70% of the workforce at the agency's office to monitor and combat trafficking in persons. TIPS office, which is responsible for leading anti-trafficking efforts across the U.S. government. The department has also held up grants for nonprofit organizations fighting trafficking around the world, putting their operations and services at risk. Shocked that the guy who Kash Patel won't answer, curiously, whether or not he is or is not in the Epstein files, would want to cut back on human trafficking, especially given some of the mysterious modeling agencies that Donald Trump was across in the 90s.
They let you do anything, grab him by the pussy.
Right.
Allegations against, here's just a list of names to do with the Trump administration. Pete Hegseth, Robert F. Kennedy, Elon Musk, Dana White, Linda McMahon, which I forgot about this, but sued for allegedly knowing boys were being sexually abused by her employee, the ringside announcer of the World Wrestling Entertainment. Obviously, Kimberly Guilfoyle allegedly sexually harassed her assistant. So it's not even just the men in Trump's administration and hovering around it that are accused of sexual violence, but also the women.
Yeah, how about the chair? How about the guy leading these hearings? Jim Jordan,
right?
The head of the Oversight Committee,
who reportedly called some of the Ohio State victims and people related to them, telling them to not testify against the guy who was a serial abuser at Ohio State. And Republicans saw that just the same way like an NHL team sees like an enforcer become a free agent. They're like, hey, we can use that on our team.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of talk about how so much of conservative rhetoric is about projection. And like you buy into that, of course, with their obsession with trans people and gay people. You get it. They're sexually repressed. They want to control things and use hierarchies and usually religious hierarchies as a justification. But I'll admit that I was even a little bit naive about their fixation on Jeffrey Epstein, where, you know, I thought it was more of a political tool for them to use against the Democrats. It had these like anti-Semitic undertones too that they like to use as like Jews and liberals as people that are pursuing perversion and are somewhat demonic, and you tap into like these Christian conspiracism. I thought that was kind of where it was. But no, it turns out it's just projection, because they're all, not all, many are predators and pedophiles themselves.
Yep.
Or protectors of predators and pedophiles.
Oh, remember Matt Schlapp? I think he's probably beneath notice, but the groper.
Oh yeah, the guy who is definitely not gay, despite all of those accusations, and was found to be sexually harassing and inappropriately touching. I think it was his bodyguard, male bodyguard.
Something like that. I have to look up. I'm looking up the exact thing, but yeah, I mean, just a bunch of creeps. Just a bunch of creeps.
Anyway, can't wait to get more into the Patel on a spit, I guess, being roasted.
Want to use the alphabet?
In the yeah, what are you hooked on phonics?
To distract from a question he very clearly does not want to answer.
A, B, C, D, E, F,
I could go
G, H. I'm not even halfway through.
What do you want to ask?
Hebrew alphabet.
Yeah.
Want to ask it in Chinese?
God.
Sun Chico wrote.
Oh God! I mean, he just wants to get out of there so he can get to another luxury dinner. That's where he was when Charlie Kirk was getting shot, hobnobbing at Rouse here in New York City. He's like, has there ever been a more visible? He's visible in the fact that he has such an insane face that he stands out. But like in terms of putting yourself out there, FBI director in history, like isn't your whole thing supposed to be keeping information close to the vest and not live tweeting evidence? Or like going to see Alex Ovechkin break the single season record and being like, "Hey, I'm here, Kash Patel
Let's
at
go on
the
Rogan.
FBI."
Yeah, I'm
Rogan.
looking at like directors of the FBI. I'm trying to think of like, do I like Chris Wray? How much of Chris Wray did we see?
I mean, Chris Wray was constantly going on podcast. No, I'm joking.
Right,
obviously.
like Comey, Mueller, Louis Freeh, Bill Sessions. Like, yeah, we don't typically see a lot from these guys. Hoover. Hoover was all over.
Yeah. God, if Hoover would be such a great podcast. Well, talking about repression. Oh my goodness. And blackmail. Oh my goodness.
I have a feeling him and Stephen Miller have similar taste in undergarments. Did you hear that in the Rolling Stone article they said he likes to play with porcelain dolls? Stephen Miller.
Stephen Miller?
Yes.
Which is just the most...
The only thing white enough for Stephen Miller.
Right. As porcelain and as it gets, as white as it gets. But also,
You forgot your tea.
Yeah.
Just bleaching it.
God, they're so emotionally arrested. It's like... Anyway. That is like, it's what a horror villain would be interested in. Little Susie has her outfit.
No biscuit before you finish your tea.
Yes. Oh. It's the only thing I can control. I can't control the flow of migrants into the United States, but I can control the Tea Party. Anyway. Clearwater, does he pop the heads off of dolls? No, they're his little friends. Anyway.
The White House insists he doesn't play with dolls, though. They literally came out and said that. That's the world we're living in right now. The White House is refusing the rumor of Stephen Miller playing with porcelain dolls.
He's just a collector. He doesn't play with them. He's just a collector, okay?
It's a liquid asset.
It's a hobby.
It accrues value.
Anyway, Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning, we had a huge show last night, talking with a professor who, actually, everyone should check this one out, particularly our interview with the fired tenured professor, Tom Alter, who was fired after Karlin Borsenko, a lunatic sort of who was at Jan 6th, real psycho, like basically clipped his talk he gave to a socialism conference. I forget what the socialism organization was. Apologies, but something he said about like the Democrats aren't, aren't gonna do socialism or whatever, and they're like, and she clipped him and got him fired from a university in Texas despite tenure.
Insane.
And so we talked with him. We also talked with Brian Meir about Bolsonaro getting 27 years at the age of 70, so we're hoping he survives for another 26 years. And also Tommy Shajan talking about these strikes of boats in Venezuela and the governments in the Caribbean, which haven't really had much of a strong response, and what neocolonialism is that sort of explains what's going on with sort of Trinidad and Tobago and stuff like that. So full show last night, patreon.com/leftreckoning.
All right, guys. See you in the fun half.